Hello there. Welcome in. Wednesday edition of The Drive on ESPN 700, Utah's number one sports talk. Of course, 92.1 FM, ESPN700sports.com, live on YouTube and wherever you podcast. Spotify, Apple, Google Play, Stitcher, Spreaker. There's a whole bunch of them. There's one called like Podbean. I don't even know. Wherever you podcast, we're probably there. If not, send us a message. We'll send a request. You listened to the Sean O'Connell show earlier. It is now The Drive. I am not Spence Checketts. I am Porter Larsen, the usual producer of this here program. I'll take you through it today. The final day of live shows for the week. That's right. We'll be off for the 4th of July weekend. And, of course, tomorrow you'll get a best of segment of this show. You'll hear a lot of NBA free agency, a lot of college football offseason, and the like. A lot of what you'll hear today on the show with myself. Tony Jones stops by the program later on. Tony Jones of The Athletic, of course, covers the Utah Jazz, covers the Denver Nuggets, at this point, the Philadelphia 76ers. Tony Jones covers the NBA. How about that? For The Athletic, of course, those are the three teams that he kind of follows on a partial beat basis. My friend Everett Gray is going to stop by the studio. Of course, a current coach here locally on the prep side in the AAU circuit. Former UNLV running rebel. NBA and overseas pro hooper. Everett will be here in studio with me, I think, as long as he gets done with practice in time. And then Bell Frazier stops by in the 4 o'clock hour. Bell live from Park City development camp for the Utah Mammoth on the NHL side. A bunch of names we got to go over with Bell. I'm not going to lie to you. When you're talking about grinding on NHL hockey prospects, I'm not your guy. If you find me at an ECHL game, I'm banging on the glass, I'm yelling, I'm having a good time. I'm not dialed into the prospects. Not yet. I'm learning on the hockey side, though. Pablo Mastroeni stops by to finish off the 4 o'clock hour. Of course, Real Salt Lake in action in July, much more than they were in June, but they had a little bit of a bounce back. I think the time off, time to take a deep breath, did them some good. And, of course, they have 4 points in their last two contests. So we'll talk to Pablo about that. Of course, the U.S. men's national team in the absence that creates with Diego Luna, one of their best players. And then the U.S. women's national team. We'll maybe bring that up with Pablo. They're in action tonight against Canada. And you can hear that one right here on ESPN 700. That's right. Westwood One brings you coverage of the U.S. women's national team. They're coming off a 4-0 win over Ireland. So a bunch on the show today. I am Porter Larsen. Spence Checketts, best of segment with you tomorrow. And then over the weekend, of course, the July 4th weekend, a bunch of baseball. If you tune in to ESPN 700 from Friday to Sunday, you're probably going to be hearing some baseball with some Utah Golf Radio mixed in there. So that gives you a little bit of a preview of what's to come over the weekend. So this is our Friday. Consider it a little bit of a football Friday. On the segments outside of the hoops that we have scheduled with Tony and Everett, the hockey we have scheduled with Bell, we'll probably talk some Utah football, some NFL offseason, give you guys the news and notes of the day, and I guess a little bit of preview. We're inching closer and closer to camp, right? To when we can officially talk college football in earnest. I think today is 59 days, right? So we're within 2 months of college football. You heard OC on the show. He's going through his start one, bench one, cut one of the Utes Pac-12 era, and it's a fun exercise. But you know, we're reaching for topics when it comes to football. We only have to do that for another month or so, and then we'll be talking camp. We'll be talking Utah, UCLA. That comes your way August 30th. Of course, you'll hear that on the station live from the Rose Bowl. Going to be a lot of fun. We'll update you on the golf world as well. And on the hoop side, news notes of the day today is that sources have indicated that the Knicks plan to hire Mike Brown as their next head coach, two-time NBA Coach of the Year. Of course, Mike Brown has had quite a bit of up and down, but I think he's also been in a lot of positions where he just doesn't have good rosters, or he has very young rosters, which for an NBA head coach and for a head coach who is a little more old school than you might expect from one in Mike Brown, that can be difficult. So I actually really like this, despite how silly the entire situation has been. The Knicks, of course, asked to interview, asked to go to different NBA cities and interview 5 different head coaches, and were turned around by those organizations and probably in some form by those head coaches. And then they started going after a few assistants, were turned away even at that point. So I think to land on Mike Brown might be a huge win and almost kind of falling into what is a much more practical and reasonable situation than the Knicks were getting themselves into after the firing of Tom Thibodeau. Now, Leon Rose has some Mike Brown connections, but I don't think that that means he lacks the credibility or the merit to be the head coach of the team that plays in the Mecca. I think, frankly, he's one of the more serious coaches they've had in a long time, and I'm excited. Top assistant, a 4-time NBA champion, as a top assistant in Golden State and San Antonio, of the Steve Kerr San Antonio tree there. A lot of time coaching Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, Tim Duncan, Ginobili. I look at Mike Brown's time in Sacramento really positively, the way he coached De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis. He was fired by the Kings in December. They were 13-18 at the time, and were coming off a playoff run. First playoff berth in 16 seasons, that was, for Sacramento in 2023. So, I thought it was a premature dismissal. I did not think it was in the Kings' best interest long term to get rid of their coach, who was building with a really good young core. Leave it to really anybody to question the decision-making in the Sacramento Kings front office. I'll let you kind of look at the track record on that one. But I thought it was premature. I did not like that move, and he broke up the longest postseason drought in NBA history at that time was the Sacramento Kings. It was 16 years, and he pulled them out of that, and now he is reportedly, according to Shams Charania and ESPN, going to be the next head coach of the New York Knickerbockers at Madison Square Garden. You hear probably more Knicks talk on this radio show because, number one, Spence Checketts, the host of the show, grew up in Madison Square Garden, quite literally. He was their ball boy. He was, I think, an intern of some kind at some point. His dad was the general manager, the president of MSG and of the Knicks, and very intimately involved in some of those really good teams in the 90s. And so there's a lot of Knicks talk there. There's connections, though, right? Walt Perrin, a bunch of guys in the Knicks front office and in the Knicks organization today have spent a lot of time with the Utah Jazz, and we're part of building some of the Jazz teams. There's connections now more so with the Celtics, but yeah, it's interesting. And then, of course, you have Tony Jones and myself, who are just Knicks fans that love bringing them up when we can. But they are the story of the NBA today because they reportedly have a new head coach in Mike Brown, fired by the Sacramento Kings in December, of course, after taking them to their first playoff berth in 16 seasons, the longest drought in NBA history at the time. The opening segment of The Drive. No Spence Checketts today. Porter Larsen here today. It is brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. ESPN 700 is the promo code. If you use that code and deposit $5, they'll give you $50 to spend on your next pick at Prize Picks. That's right. Promo code ESPN 700 for $50 at entry when you enter $5 or more on Prize Picks using the code ESPN 700 and go from there. As I mentioned, still to come in the show today, Tony Jones of The Athletic, Everett Gray, former pro hooper, Belle Frazier of the Salt Lake Tribune, talking some Utah Mammoth and some NHL, Pablo Mastroeni, talking some Real Salt Lake and a bunch of Utah football talk, Big 12 football talk, 59 days away from Utah at UCLA in the Rose Bowl. I am Porter Larsen, and this is The Drive on Utah's number one sports talk. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, and ESPN700sports.com. Welcome back. Drive time on a Wednesday, July 2nd. Our last live show of the week. Spence is out today. We'll have a little best of tomorrow and then a bunch of baseball over the 4th of July weekend. We'll be back on a Monday. Thanks for joining us today as we talk a little NBA free agency, a little Jazz offseason. We'll get to some college football, some NFL offseason, live updates from Wimbledon, and more on the program later on. Everett Gray in studio in just a moment. Belle Frazier on the horn from Park City, and Pablo Mastroeni, the gaffer of Real Salt Lake, later in the show. But now, oh yes, he is one Tony Jones of The Athletic. He covers the Utah Jazz. He covers the Denver Nuggets. He covers the Philadelphia 76ers. Covers the NBA for The Athletic. TJ, what's up, my friend?
How are you? Thanks for having me, as always.
No, thank you. Thank you for your time, as always. The pleasure is ours at ESPN 700, talking with Tony Jones, one of our favorite interviewers. If you look at the podcast numbers, Tony Jones is always a high performer. So thank you, TJ. Appreciate it.
Oh, see, now the analytics. I'm not even an analytics guy, but I can get behind those analytics right there.
Yeah, there's no eye test on sports radio, even though I am on YouTube. I want to turn this camera away. I got into this because it's radio, but it's okay. It's okay. Tony, I do want to, of course, get into the Jazz offseason, the draft recap. You and I have not had a chance to get in depth on a lot of that stuff. So let's start. Let's start at the top. Ace Bailey, the first pick the Jazz take in the 2025 NBA draft. There was a lot of chatter about Ace Bailey in NBA circles throughout the next, 4 days. But a lot of that chatter was kind of happening outside of the actual circles that matter. I was at Jazz HQ on draft day. We talked to Ace Bailey via Zoom. Really cordial, really nice kid. No reservations there. No reservations talking to him at any point in the process. There were some, let's say, representatives speaking for him that I would say stepped in and complicated the process. But now we're here. He's on the ground. It seems like a good fit for now. And I want your returns now on Ace Bailey, the player, and we'll get into the other stuff, the silly stuff from the weekend after.
Well, I mean, obviously he hasn't played a game yet, so we'll see what the returns are. He's had a couple of practices. He's meshing in well with his teammates, and he's here, and we'll see what Summer League brings, and what that bleeds into with the season. The one thing I think that bears mentioning is that the path to playing time, major playing time, and even a starting position is there for Ace. I mean, they don't have a real natural scoring small forward. I mean, Larry Markkinen is Utah's best player. He's a 4-3, which is a power forward / small forward. But the chance for Ace to make his mark is wide open, which is one of the reasons why the Jazz are such a good fit for him.
And he's a player that, from a lot of folks in the draft, there's a high ceiling there. Reports were that he didn't necessarily want to go to certain places in the top 5. Specifics weren't totally reported there, but he didn't work out for teams in the pre-draft process. Can you walk us through kind of what led to that and why it didn't seem to scare the Jazz off at all?
Well, I mean, he obviously wanted to go, a certain place. He wanted to go to Washington,
yep.
Or should I say his people wanted him to go to Washington. But this isn't free agency. You don't get to pick, your play, where you start, and the things that went on behind the scenes. I mean, that's stuff that happens every draft. You can name a draft, and somebody has tried to steer his way toward a place. But that being said, it's a draft, right? So, it's not free agency. You don't get to choose where you go. You don't have any control over where you go. And the Utah Jazz know that. And the Utah Jazz know that they're not a franchise that's going to attract high-level free agents. They've found out over the last 3 or 4 years that, not even trading for high-level players is in their control. What's in their control is them being able to draft. So that's why they took Ace. He was the top player on their board. They had him third on their board. And, they'll get him here, and now they have team control over him. And that's, the whole reason why, the Jazz didn't care whether Ace worked out or provided his medicals or whether he wanted to go to the Wizards or not. It didn't matter. What matters is the Jazz had the control to draft him, and they drafted him.
As you mentioned right there, the Jazz had him number 3 on their board overall. If you look at a lot of, draft guys that cover the draft, they'll tell you the Jazz may have got the second or third most talented player in the draft at number 5. That leads you to believe there's something there that is causing the drop. Obviously, 5 is not a major drop, but is there anything outside of just the silliness from the representation and the alleged play to get to Washington and not working out for teams? Is there anything outside of that? It seems, conversations with Ace, he seems like a nice, cordial kid. I haven't heard anything off the floor. He's 18 years old, so there's a lot of room for growth. Is there really anything that you've heard on the negative side outside of some of this pre-draft stuff?
Well, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And, when I looked at the draft, I think, Cooper Flagg is clearly the number 1 player in the draft. Dylan Harper is clearly the number 2 player in the draft. So then you have, Ace Bailey, Trey Johnson, BJ Etchcom, Con Kneppel, those guys. Trey Johnson, I think I mentioned Trey. Those are the guys that are in the next tier. So, you can kind of put them any way you like. You can put them in any order you like. And, they're still kind of the same tier. I would drop Con first because I think Con's upside isn't where, Ace's is or VJ Etchcom's is.
Agreed.
Then you look at Ace, and then you look at, okay, he's 6'9", he's 6'10". He's got a 7'1" wingspan. He's a guy, and he's one of the 2 best shot makers in the draft, along with, Trey Johnson. So, and that being said, none of those guys in that tier are perfect. Ace has to greatly improve his ball handling, and he has to greatly improve his ability to make plays for others. VJ Etchcom has to become a better shooter, but VJ Etchcom is, the best athlete of the group and probably the best defender of the group. Trey Johnson is probably the best overall offensive player of the group, but he's got major concerns defensively, and his body has major concerns. Con Kneppel, he might be the best player of the group today, but will he be the best player of the group in 5 years? So the reason why Con Kneppel went to Charlotte is because Charlotte needed a good player today to pair with LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. The reason why, VJ Etchcom went to Philly is because Philly needed athleticism on his roster in the worst way. And they needed somebody who can defend and be a connector next to Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain. So that's why you saw Ace be available at 5. And then, for the Jazz, it was probably a no-brainer for them. They were going to take Ace. But if the Jazz were 3, then Ace would have gone 3. And if Philly was 4, then Con Kneppel would have been available at 5. So it wasn't, a matter of who was better. They're all in the same tier. It's that who was better congruent to those specific teams.
Where is Ace Bailey NBA rotation ready today? And, where do you think the Jazz are really putting a lot of focus into starting right now, starting at, Summer League and such?
I don't know that it matters whether he's NBA rotation ready right now, I think the Jazz has got to throw him out there for 30 minutes a night.
I agree. But I still want that question though. I do agree though. Just from a player standpoint, right? From a physical trait standpoint, you mentioned the shot making. He probably wants to beef up a little bit. That's part of almost every NBA prospect's transition. But anything that stands out to you is something they're going to have to really lean on.
I think today you can put Ace in an NBA game and he'll get you 15 points and he'll get you 5 or 6 rebounds because, the shot making is truly exceptional. He's a guy that if he gets to his spot, he's going to make shots. And, I think he has to learn how to play a little bit. And I think that he's going to have to adjust to playing against guys that are like size, like athletes, and able to really counter, some of the stuff that he does. But, he's probably a rotation player right now for, maybe half the league. I mean, if you put him on a contender, he's not going to be a rotation player. And that's one of the reasons why, Ace's people then, particularly want him to go to Philadelphia because if he goes to Philadelphia, Tyrese Maxey is at point guard and Jared McCain is at shooting guard and Paul George is at small forward. And if Paul George isn't at small forward, there's Justin Edwards and then there's Kelly Oubre Jr. I mean, there are 3 or 4 wings that would play over him. So, he wanted to go to a place where he could step into a rotation spot right away. And that's Washington. That's definitely Utah. That probably would have been Charlotte. And, that probably would have been – he would have had a really good chance in New Orleans as well. So, it's one of those things where, I think Ace can step into an NBA game and be a rotation-level player right away because of the way he makes shots. But, where does the rest of his game come and how does the rest of his game progress? That's going to tell the tale of what he ultimately is as an NBA player.
Yeah, that's all I'm curious about, right? His skill and his scoring ability, those are things that they jump off the page. They're obvious. But there were, and when you do watch his tape, the times you do see holes are when he has the few times at the college level he has faced by a 6'9", 6'10" wing with some level of physicality, and that's going to be every team in the NBA that has someone like that to throw at him. And I'm interested to see how he responds, creating for others a little bit, right? That's something I'm interested to see on the Ace Bailey front. Now to the next pick. The Jazz moved up, and we talked about this a lot in the draft room at Jazz HQ on that draft day. 15 to 20 was a place where, with the assets the Jazz had, you really looked at that as a possibility for them to move up in the draft. They did, and they got Walt Clayton Jr. out of Florida. Now, Tony, a lot of people, including me, kind of skew their thoughts on college basketball players based on what they see in the tournament, right? Probably because you don't watch necessarily much Florida Gators basketball in October and November and December. That is certainly the case for me. So how much of the success we saw from Walt Clayton in the tournament is consistent and real, and how much of it is, maybe more of a moment for him? What is the full prospect that we're getting in Walt Clayton?
Oh, it wasn't just the tournament that he was an All-American.
Yep.
And he was one of the best point guards in the country, not only this past year, but the previous year as well. The thing that I love about, Walter Clayton Jr. is he's effective with or without the ball. He doesn't need to dominate the ball to be effective. He is an exceptional shooter. Just a knockdown shooter, really tough guy, has more, bursts off the bounce than people give him credit for. He can finish at the rim, and he just knows how to play. You're not going to see, a guy who's uh, going to make the wrong basketball play. He's ready to play right away. Whether it's the Utah Jazz, whether it's a playoff team, whether it's a team, that has aspirations of winning a championship. Walter Clayton Jr. is ready to play right now, today. And, he's a little older, which is why, he's still available around 20. And he's somewhat on the small side, but he's a very, very, very skilled and tough offensive player. He's a tough defender. He's a tough kid all around. And I think that he's really going to help the Jazz in a lot of ways.
Similarly to what I just said about Walt Clayton Jr., you probably heard more about John Tonji during the playoffs or during March Madness than you did throughout a lot of the year. And, especially if you're a Jazz fan, you may be a BYU crossover and you remember his performance against the Cougars in the tournament. And you're like, oh, we got that guy late in the second round. Seems like a pretty good get, but of course he doesn't average 37 points like he did against BYU. Give us a breakdown of John Tonje and, of course, the trend, Tony, that we clearly saw with those 3 picks, which is shot making and offense.
The interesting thing about Tonje is that the Jazz had a first-round grade on him. And he likely would have been the pick at 43 had the Jazz stayed at 43. So the fact that they got him nearly 10 picks later was really kind of a win for them in their eyes. He's, a lot like Clayton, he's an older guy. But, he's a really, really, really good shooter, very good scorer. Not a great athlete. The thing about Clayton is Clayton's a really good athlete as well. And Ace is obviously a great athlete. Tonji's not a great athlete. He's very under the rim, but he's very skilled as well. Really good footwork, NBA-ready body. So that's not going to be an issue for him. I expect him to win a roster spot because I think the Jazz are really high on him. And, he's a mature kid as well. And, as BYU fans saw, much to their chagrin, he has a skill where he knows how to draw fouls. And I think we've seen that skill in the NBA with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Dwayne Wade in the past, James Harden in the past. When you know how to draw fouls, that puts you in another tier offensively. So, Tonji's got a chance to come in and kind of see, what he can make of himself in terms of where he can be as a rotation piece. But I fully expect him to make the roster, and I think the Jazz think they have a good one there.
You mentioned Tonje at maybe a first-round draft grade on him. Well, pretty much everyone I talked to in draft circles had not a first-round draft grade, but a draft grade, a second-round or draftable grade on R.J. Lewis Jr., who the Jazz got as a undrafted free agent alongside Stephen Crowell and Selton Miguel. Give us a quick on those 3 guys, and as I mentioned, RJ specifically, give us a quick breakdown of those 3 because, we do still have to get to some free agency and trades.
RJ, Stephen Crowell, who else?
Selton Miguel on a 2-way.
Well, he's not going to play because he's hurt.
Right.
So let's skip him. Crowell is a stretch big. Another under rim guy, but another really skilled guy. And another guy who's ready to play physically at the NBA level. I don't know, if he's going to, stick with the Jazz. I would think that he's going to be somebody who's going to be with the Stars. R.J. Lewis. I wish he had gone back to school because I think he needed to go back to school, and I think he would have made a lot more money in school than he's going to make now on a 2-way. I wasn't in love with him at St. John's. Like, I just thought he shot a lot, and I know that he won Big East Player of the Year, but I thought the Big East was like historically weak this year. he's a shooter with size. I like that about him. And he's a guy who's not afraid to shoot. I really like that about him. I don't think he reacted well to getting benched by Patino in the tournament. So we'll see how he reacts to being coached. But the Jazz saw enough, and they liked him enough to give him a two-way. So we'll see how he goes from there.
Additionally, already this offseason, the Jazz have moved off Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson. Give us, obviously, the Clarkson in a buyout and Sexton in a trade. What does that do for the Jazz outside of giving these guys, these young players, room to grow, room to play, minutes to play? Give us an idea of what that does contractually in the offseason in the market.
I mean, it doesn't really do anything for them, except for, pave the way for Clayton and Keontae and Isaiah Collier, which, look, they needed the Jazz. They needed those guys to play. They need those guys to play 35 minutes a night next year because they got to see what they have. Because of that, Colin and JC, they had to go. So it didn't matter, how they went. It just mattered that they went, which is why you saw the buyout, which is why you saw a trade for negative value. I mean, Colin did not have, he didn't have value on the market, so, they just had to get what they could for him, which was essentially nothing.
Right.
They just have to figure out, what they have in the young guys, especially this year. And I think that they're going to play the young guys in the backcourt and let those guys, kind of weed themselves out or, kind of emerge from the pack.
Summer League's going to tell us a lot of the guys that we haven't yet mentioned, guys that were drafted last year, right? Isaiah Collier, Bryce Sensabaugh, Cody Williams. I know, as you mentioned, we may not see some of the players the Jazz released as their Summer League roster, but what are you looking for from those, probably mainly the guard core in this upcoming Summer League, just a few days out?
I'm just looking for them to play. Make mistakes, make good plays, whatever. Summer League is for, just kind of experimenting and, just kind of doing, what you can. I do want to see, what Isaiah Collier's jump shot looks like. I want to see what Cody Williams' body looks like, and, what the maturation of his game looks like. But you're going to see missed shots, you're going to see air balls, you're going to see turnovers, you're going to see some sloppy play, but you're going to see, some mixes of brilliance as well. So, you got to take, the good with the bad, but, overall, when Vegas is over, you want to be able to say that Isaiah Collier looks better than he did last year, and you want to say Cody Williams looks better than he did last year. And ideally, what you want is for the Jazz to be like, Isaiah, Cody, we're 3 games in, and you're obviously, better than Summer League. So, let's shut you down for the remainder of Summer League. So we'll see what happens there.
Any other moves you expect with the Jazz? Obviously, John Collins is a contract that we're looking at, but is that something you expect maybe during the season, or is there something you're looking at is maybe a potential change before tip-off?
I expect them to keep trying to trade John, but I don't think he has a market as of now. And if they can't trade him, I expect him to be on the roster.
Fair enough.
I would not expect a buyout from John. For John.
Yeah, and especially after getting the buyout with Jordan, I don't know that would be something they do. It might just be too much of a cost with his $26.6 million contract. So, Tony Jones, dates that folks can look forward to? Obviously, the summer league here just around the corner. But what are folks looking for, at least in Jazzland, next couple of weeks in coverage of the Athletic and Tony Jones?
Just I'm gonna hang around and just keep working and just keep writing and see what happens from there. Let the chips fall where they may.
Do you have like some actual downtime? It's been busy with you chasing 3 NBA teams and daughters and the like, I'm sure.
Not yet. We're right in the middle of off season, so just pedal to the metal.
All right, Tony. Appreciate your time as always, my friend. Enjoy the weekend. I know you'll be busy, but appreciate your time and thanks for fitting us in.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you. Thank you for having me as always.
Tony Jones of The Athletic, at T Jones on the NBA. Of course, up there on Twitter is where you can find him. We appreciate him joining us each and every week on the show. Tony today brought to you by our friends at Utah Elite Services. Right now, with summer here, it's the perfect time to be introducing one of our newest partners to the ESPN Sports Radio Network. Utah Elite Services is a Utah-grown asphalt maintenance and concrete repair company. Obviously, rain, snow, wind, and now the extreme heat. Your concrete has been through it all. Any cracks, extreme damage? Well, give Corey's team a call for crack sealing, coating, striping, asphalt overlays, complete tear-outs and replacement of your concrete, and more. It's 801-821-8670 for a no-cost, no-obligation estimate. Give Utah Elite Services a call at 801-821-8670. That's 801-821-8670. Back with more on the other side. It is Utah's #1 sports talk. I am Porter Larsen. Everett Gray joins me in studio coming up next, the 3 o'clock hour, right here on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back in Drive Time on a Wednesday afternoon. No Spence Checketts today. I am Porter Larsen filling in. Wishing you in advance a happy 4th of July weekend. Spence will be back on a Monday. We've got a best of edition tomorrow and a lot of baseball marathon over the holiday weekend as well. And appreciate you guys for joining us on this Wednesday. In studio with me now, one Everett Gray, former pro hooper, current coach here locally. We go way back a little bit.
Yeah, we do.
In some way. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing all right. I miss you guys. It's been a minute, but
you used to do like regular in studio hits with Bill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you know Sean O'Connell?
I've met him.
I'm sure you've met Spence.
Young. Yeah, when he was young, I think he was at the U playing football. But it's been a minute. But I like you guys. Obviously, I listen and chime in every once in a while. But I miss you guys.
I got to introduce you guys to the fellas and get you in here a little bit more. Obviously, a good hoops mind to have here locally, talking NBA, college basketball. You've been plugged in to the NBA and basketball in general in the West for a long time, and with people who know what's going on in the sport. So
right.
You bring some value in that regard. Now, was your first gig coaching at Summit Academy here? Was that your first?
No. So I retired from basketball, and a friend of mine, he was the head coach at Murray girls. Actually, now he's the men's coach.
Okay.
And he came to me and was like, "Hey, would you want to be an assistant?" And I wasn't doing anything. I was retired. I was about to go. I was going to move because everybody knows that if you know me, I want to move to Oregon, Seaside, Oregon. That's my spot.
But you were here.
Yeah, I was here. Yeah. So I decided to become a girls coach. I was assistant coach at Murray High School. And then I moved over to was there for 3 years, I believe. And then I went over to Judge for a year. And then that's when I got the Summit Academy job. And
okay.
by the way, Porter, the thing is, the reason why I got the job, I was coaching the AAU team against the athletic director at Summit Academy. They wasn't even open yet. And it was my 8th graders playing against his 10th graders. And we beat them by 30. He was like, "Those kids are not the same age." I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. They're in the 8th grade.
They're younger."
Right, they're younger. So he gave me a card, and the rest was history, and he just gave me the head coaching job right then on the spot.
Well, because that was like a new thing, right? That was a kind of a charter school that had just been formed there. So that was interesting. I grew up playing the same 8 schools my whole life, and they were all these little rural farm towns. And then all of a sudden, we're South Summit, and this Summit Academy school pops up.
Right.
Like, who are these guys? And Everett Gray was coaching them.
Right. Yeah, it was good times. We had some battles with South Summit. It was great, and I'm not very liked up in that area, but it was a good competition, and South Summit people was pretty good people.
Well, I don't know if you weren't liked or if it was just me and you that were jawing at each other. I know there's always some folks.
Yeah, but it's competition. At that point, I'm a competitor. If you talk to me, I'm gonna talk to you. Right?
I learned that.
Right.
I learned that, Everett.
You want to be grown, I'm gonna treat you grown.
I now that I remember this, we played because we got upset in the state tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So we played you guys in you guys lost bracket, right? Remember,
yeah,
my last high school game was against you.
Yeah, I remember.
And I got thrown out. Or at least I got a technical and then I got subbed out.
Really? Yeah, I remember because, we were our first year, we got in our preseason, we got handled, but we played pretty well in our region. But we actually upset Beaver that year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we ended up losing to Wasatch Academy like everybody did. But we ended up playing you guys in that next game because we beat North Summit, and then we played you guys again. But it was good. I remember you get a tech. I can't remember you got kicked out, but
yeah, I think I got a tech, and my coach. I remember, and he listens sometimes. So if Dusty's listening, I remember this conversation before the game. He said, "I don't care what happens, no techs," because we had been having issues with composure through we got upset. It was part of the deal. No techs, he said.
Right.
I got a tech. and it started a roller coaster. He got teed up. One of my other guys got teed up. Right. It ended up being like 4 or 5 of them, even though we had this very specific conversation. We don't care if we win. We've played Summit Academy 4 times this year.
Right.
No techs. And it went the other way. Right. But it was fun.
Yeah,
it was fun.
I'm not a big fan of consolation. I play my younger kids in that.
Right.
I'm not a big fan of it, but it was I was like, I'm glad it ain't me this time.
Right.
In that game. I remember that game, Porter.
Yeah, fun time. So I know there's some folks who are like, are we talking 2A basketball on sports radio? Yeah, well, it's June, and Everett Gray and Porter Larsen are in the studio, so you're damn right we are. Yes. We're going to talk some Jazz basketball as well, of course. We'll get to some college stuff. I'm going to grill Everett about P. Diddy and also Jake Retzloff and the BYU quarterback situation. I kid. No,
you can't.
We'll breach those topics shortly, but talking mostly hoops today. I did want to get your read, Everett, on what we were just talking about with Tony Jones. The Utah Jazz picking up Ace Bailey out of Rutgers. He was, as a lot of people looked at in the draft, I mean, 6'9", 18 years old, right? He's one of the youngest players in the draft.
Right.
And just a prototypical offensive wing at the NBA level, right? It's what you look for in a prospect. If you're a NBA scout and you're trying to mold something, that's kind of where you start. Now, Cooper Flagg was clearly the most molded, ready player in that draft, but there were a lot of people who had Ace Bailey as the next 2 or 3 guys on that list. The Jazz get him at number 5. I'll kind of form the first question the same way I did Tony. Where is he NBA ready? And where do you think the Jazz are going to really have to focus their efforts?
Can I just start off with this, Porter? Who was the coach at Rutgers? I have to go here. Just give me like 20 seconds.
Go for it.
You have, if he would have worked out, Porter, he would have been the 3rd guy, maybe the 2nd guy. So they would have had what, Porter? Number 2 or 3, whatever. If he would have worked out, they didn't even make it to the tournament. That's another thing, and we're not going to get into that right now. The one thing about the Angels.
How did they not? I mean, they were 15. They didn't even get to 500.
No, that was my other red flag. Why they didn't get to the tournament? But my other thing, the thing is that the Angels really they like wings, bigger wings. Jaylen Brown with Boston, and Tatum, and and even when they went and got Drew Holiday, bigger guards on the wings because they saw this coming. That's the Ainge thing.
It's positionless basketball, and they lean into it.
Yeah, so they saw that coming. The kid is 6'9", 6'8", 6, whatever they say he is. I think it was a good pick. Now, is he ready to play? No, I mean, he's going to take some time. They're going to give him some time. I think if he ends up staying here, because you can win here. You can win anywhere. Last time I checked, Utah is part of the United States. So their money is the same, right?
Yes.
So you should be.
Despite them trying not to be in 1857 and 1858.
Right.
They are.
So their money is the same. It's green. It's the same thing. Now, you got to realize, too, if he can win here, he'll own this town. Now, the last 7, we haven't had a back-to-back champion in a while, Porter. So you can, if OKC can do it, if you build it through the draft, you can do it. And I think that's the first start. I think they're on their way to getting to that point where they can have some really good players. Now, he want to go by Walt. Porter.
It's not Walter, it's Walt.
Yeah, he want to go by Walt. So Walt, I think
don't call him Walter Clayton Jr.
Boom. I think he's the steal of the draft for me. I like him. I think he's ready to play. He was an Iona kid, so he played for Patino, so he was a tough kid. He's tough. And I think his pattern, I think he's just going to continue to get better. He's a little bit older. I think he's 23. That doesn't bother me because he's ready to play now. But I think the Ace Bailey kid, the issues, I don't know the issue. I think he's a really talented kid, long wing, can make shots. And I wasn't going to go out of town this weekend, but I want to watch this kid play at the Summer League. So I'm going to go to the Summer League and watch this kid play. But I think I think at 5 he was a steal of the draft.
And then you mentioned with Clayton, you liked that pick as well. The Jazz actually had him higher on their board, and they moved up to 18 to get him. Iona and then Florida, and then while at Florida was really productive in the NCAA tournament specifically. That's always something you have high regard for, is when someone goes into high pressure situations and performs. That's something that we have seen from Walt Clayton Jr., but it's also shot making. The Jazz really have clearly put an emphasis on that. Is that just something you do when you're a young team and you don't yet have much of an identity? You don't have much of, what you want your roster to be. Do you just go get the best basketball players, the best hoopers at that point?
Yeah, he was on the board. Those are the two guys they kind of wanted, and it fell into their hand. Me personally, if the Bailey kid buys in, I think in the next 2-3 years. Now the other elephant in the room is marketing. What are you going to do with marketing?
Right.
And does he want to stay here through another rebuild? Kind of. I mean, you can get a pick or two and a player for marketing. I don't think the Jazz are done. I really don't think they're done. But we'll probably see after the summer league what will really actually happen with the marketing kit. So, but I think me personally, I think Utah just got the steal of the draft. It depends on if Ace and his camp, which was the issue behind the scenes.
Right.
But if he buys in, and what I'm hearing, he just loves basketball. And this is a perfect place for him. I love Utah. I'm from inner city LA. And trust me, living here is less stressful than when I have to go back home once a month and I have to get in LA mode and look into my mirrors every time, go see my sister and my brother. But this is much easier living, and you can focus on your craft. If you don't really like it here, you're just here for the season. You get on the first thing smoking, you go wherever you want to go. You got the money, you can do that.
Right.
But I think if he buys in, and I know that the Clayton kid, he already kind of bought in. I monitor some on his social media. He was all, hey, tell me where the food spots, people. Utah, he was doing all that little stuff. So that told me right then and there he kind of want to be here. This can be his team, because last time I checked, Porter, the money is green everywhere. And if you can win here, they'll take care of you, especially Ryan Smith and his family and his organization will take care of you. And you can win here, because small markets now, it's just the way the NBA is now. You can win here. And if you can win a championship here in Utah, you're own Utah. They'll put Ace Bailey and Walt car dealerships all over Utah.
There'll be more statues,
right?
For real. If you win a title here, you will be like the church might get involved, right? If you win a title for the Jazz, there may be more statues.
Don't go there. Just slow down, player. Slow down.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
But from a real level, there's like a fervent faith almost following of the Utah Jazz from people who are local, the Stockton and Malone days. Man, if they were to win a title, those players would be seen in a really hallowed light.
Right.
And as the NBA has shown you in the Adam Silver era,
right,
differently than any era before it, anyone can win an NBA championship if the right pieces are in place.
Right.
And if your front office gets the right pieces in place, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you play in Toronto where it's frozen.
Right.
You can go win a title if you have the right players. And that is that should be exciting if you have a front office in place that you feel is capable of doing so. And I mentioned right in the draft, if you're further along in this build, if you have Lauri Markkanen and a veteran point guard, maybe a more established Walker Kessler or a center that maybe you've shored him up long term, you're more confident in that being. They've shopped Kessler a little bit, so maybe that's not the situation, right? If you're a little bit further along in the rebuild, you may look at the draft for more specificity. Right. You may be looking, we need a 4, a stretch 4.
Right.
We need a 3-and-D shooting guard. I don't really see the Jazz at that point. So going out and getting maybe some of the best shot makers in the draft is a really good, at least high risk, not that much of a low reward strategy. And then you go and follow it up with John Tonji, who dropped 37 on BYU and is part of that similar mold. He's 23. He's a little older. But it's clear that that's the Jazz trend and their MO this offseason.
Well, the Tonji kid is another kid who'll probably play in the league for 10, 12 years.
Yeah.
I think like I said, I think the Jazz, right behind a couple other teams, I don't need to mention them because I'm here in this market. I think they did really well in the draft, and Austin did a great job with this draft. And it can be an A or it can be like a B-. It just depends on this Ace kid.
Right.
And I think the Tonji kid, he'll do a two-way, go back and forth, but he'll end up at the end of the season, my opinion, he'll probably end up playing because they're going to go young. And then you have to pay attention to the marketing thing. If they're going to trade it, I wouldn't say they totally trying to – because the next year draft is actually better than this draft, way better. And
I say you don't want to continue to tank and tank,
Right, right,
but
right.
you look at the draft,
Mhm.
and AJ DeBonsa might be
Right.
available at number 1. This draft at the top 10 of the next draft
Yeah.
is seen is one of the best in recent years.
Really good. I mean, that's just as similar to OKC how they did it. Jalen Williams he fell to them, and obviously they had the picks for Shea, but and they did a good pick obviously with the big kid from Minnesota. I forgot his name. Chet Holmgren.
Yeah, sorry.
So
Holmgren.
the thing is that too with Utah, my opinion, it's just kids falling to the right pick for you guys. So if you can get a top European player that doesn't mind living here, they don't mind. They just want to play, and then they go off and ride horses back home. But I'm talking about a big fella from Jokic. But the thing is that if you can get the right player at the right time, that's a fit, especially European kids that don't mind living in this climate and during the winter, because they're not really here during the summer when it's kind of hot. But the thing is that if they fall to the Jazz at certain picks, that can happen next year. But I think next year, I think they can be in the top 5 again. They get that one pick, and now you can build your nucleus, and then you figure out what you're going to do with Laurie Markkinen.
Well, and the other part of this is when you build a draft board and you have identified a player, you're not thinking as much as we are in the media and as fans are about what this kid thinks about the Jazz, or Salt Lake's restaurant scene, right? That is so over talked about in draft circles. And you know it as someone who's not from here, who moved in after a pro sports career. A lot of athletes that come here end up staying here because they like that they're in a place that has, now it's changing, little traffic, and they can go out and escape. They can buy big plots of real estate and do whatever the hell they want. It's actually really attractive for a lot of pro athletes. One of my good friends, Zach Moss, 0 connections to the state of Utah outside of Dennis Erickson and some Miami stuff, right? He's going to live here. He's bringing his family up here. He loves it here. I can give you 30 other athletes who from LA, from New York, from Miami, who want to stay here because of
the less stress, trust me.
And because they got drafted here by chance. They never chose to live here, and then they ended up really liking it. That's always a possibility, and I think a lot of times not even a possibility, but a likelihood once you get here.
There's a lot of ex-Jazz players still. Darren Williams is still here. I think Jordan.
Well, we
Larsen. Go ahead.
I was going to say Michael Jordan specifically. We in another weird twist have both worked with Michael Jordan. You were playing basketball, and I was working on his landscaping lights.
Let me give you another. That's why I remember when you called me. He's the worst gambler ever, but he forgets that he's a billionaire. So let me give you my story. So I was working with the Larry Miller Group security. So this when he owned a motorcycle. So I was with him and his group and make sure no one came in his private booth. But they were betting on who's going to be in first when they come back. It was thousands of dollars on who's going to be in first. He wasn't even betting on his own team. He was just like, it was just the most ridiculous betting. That's why when I was like, we were playing golf with him, I couldn't even imagine what they were betting on, because he's the worst gambler. I wouldn't say he's not over crazy, but he'll just bet on anything. He don't care if it's $20. He don't care if it's $100. He'll bet you on anything. Yeah,
you asked me to bet on every hole. I'm like, every hole player, he's betting on if the guy with a lawnmower is going to cross the fairway one more time. He's betting on if that squirrel is going to jump over the sidewalk. Like it's hilarious, but absurd. And as you mentioned, forgets he's a billionaire because it is those little silly things. He's still competitive as he is in the NBA Finals about them, and you will see that come out on the golf course.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Very funny stuff. But yeah, it shows you that players. Number one, it's this dry, arid, mountain, desert training, basically training paradise, where you can come at somewhat elevation and train year-round, and, as you mentioned, live a fairly stress-free life. Now, there's certain cultural oddities. You're not going to be able to find some liquor on a Sunday. You get used to that stuff in Utah. It's changing. It's growing. I think that'll be something you adjust to, but I really don't think it's something that is as real as it's talked about online
Right.
and with fans who are sometimes a little insecure about the way that they're perceived.
Right. Yeah. So some of my friends, they always ask me, "Hey, how's it living in Utah?" So I tell them it's great. I mean, like I said, like most of my friends that grew up like I grew up. And let me give an example. Another example: a kid at the U, Sanders. Kendall Sanders just signed as a freshman, 6'10" kid. His dad has played at USC, and he called me like last week. Hey, man, obviously look out for my son. But how is it in Utah? Where you live at? I kind of want to,
Right.
have my son
You
near
probably
you.
hear stuff. I'm sure. You hear
Yeah.
the stuff we're talking about.
Right. I just said, hey, I live downtown in the avenues. That's more my speed. And there's spots. You can pick anywhere you want. It's just like any other city. You can get in. If you get in trouble here, you're looking for it.
Yeah.
Right. And I know exactly where to go. And I told him where not to go. I don't need to say it on the radio, but he won't be in those spots in that area ever. But I think Utah is a great city, especially for a young basketball player or what hockey player or whoever. It's just a good situation for you because you can hone in on your craft and get better. And if you're trying to get in trouble here, you're looking for it, and then this ain't the place for you.
We'll talk a little bit more about the Jazz, their offseason, their draft. I want to talk some offseason college basketball, some recruiting, a new head coach on the Hill,
Right.
with some local connections. Of course, a lot going on in Provo and all the local schools. We'll get Everett's read on that and continue the hoops talk on the other side. Some hockey a little bit later on with Bell Frazier, Pablo Mastroeni on Real Salt Lake, and of course, we are 59 days away from college football. Utah, UCLA in the Rose Bowl, August 30th. And, of course, right here on ESPN 700. I'll have the pregame, and we'll kick off the season in short order here on Utah's #1 sports talk. I am Porter Larsen. That's Everett Gray. Olivia Benyon behind the glass. Back with more on the other side. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Say that again. Who's their coach? Priella or whatever? What? I don't even remember. I mean, if you have that kind of roster at the college level, maybe you don't win it, but you should be in the tournament. The tournament's a different story, but the regular season you should be winning 20 games. They were 15 and 17. Some more Tribe Called Quest for your Wednesday afternoon. Some We the People, appropriately, for your 4th of July weekend. Porter Larsen in studio with you. Everett Gray alongside me for another segment here, the 3 o'clock hour. Talking some hoops. A lot of Jazz draft stuff in the first segment. We'll do a little bit more of that in the Jazz off season, and we'll do some college stuff as well. You mentioned, though, you went to the U.S. Open tennis side last year?
I'm going to go this year.
Okay, you're going to the next
one.
My
daughter went last year, and she said, Dad, you know what kids say, you got to pull up, Dad.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pull up.
Looks like a fun event, man.
Yes.
Wimbledon, of course, going on right now. Taylor Fritz won 10 of his last 11 matches and is now moving on today after the win over Gabriel Diallo. And moving on to the third round. But an American hasn't won, I want to say, Wimbledon since 2000.
Pete Sampras?
2003? Yeah.
Pete, right?
Yeah, at Wimbledon, the last one. So
right.
25 years, and folks now looking at Taylor Fritz. And we'll keep you updated on Wimbledon as we go along. I'll be honest, I grew up watching Nadal and Federer and Djokovic, and there's always that, like, and you do it with basketball. You do it like Jordan. You worry who's next. Well, here's Kobe. Here's LeBron. Right. For tennis, it really felt that way because there were 3 guys who won everything.
Right.
4 guys if you want to go in with the Americans, and it was 20 plus years of that. And I was like, what's next? There wasn't a clear look, and then all of a sudden, Carlos Alcaraz out of nowhere, the Sinner kid out of nowhere.
Right.
Pretty exciting, actually. The next era of tennis, some really really talented players.
I like the Alcaraz kid. I like him. He's going to be good for a while. And that's the thing about tennis.
He's an alien, dude.
Right.
He just you'll see a ball get shot to the opposite corner, and he just jumps 30 feet and is sliding and gets the return. It's remarkable.
It's just like sport. It's like any other sport. All this, the technology is just getting better, and these guys getting more athletic, and they covering more space on tennis. And don't laugh, Port. I played tennis growing up because so many people. Like
Why you think I'm going to laugh?
No, because people was like, you play tennis? I'm like, yeah. My mom put me in this camp where every day was a different sport. And
there you go.
I got to tell it like it is. She was just like, I want you to be able to play with white kids.
There you go.
And I don't want you to sit on the sideline and you can't play. So you're going to this camp.
I love it.
So every day it was swimming. It was learning how to hold a golf club and then, tennis. So, and then obviously the 3 big ones. But it was, I loved playing tennis growing up.
And honestly, like it's so fun when it's hard. Number one, tennis is frustrating. Similarly to golf,
right?
Getting good at it's really hard, but it's a fun sport.
The one sport I do like, Spence, right off the topic, a little bit off the topic, but I always wanted to play lacrosse. My mom always talked about Jim Brown. I think she had a crush on Jim Brown, but people don't know Jim was nice with the stick at Syracuse.
Interesting.
Yeah, so he was an All-American lacrosse player.
I did not
at
know
Syracuse.
that. That's a fun fact for you.
There you go, buddy.
Jim Brown. I would love to see you run around with a lacrosse stick.
Right. I would love to, yeah. But it was just too expensive for us. We couldn't afford that. But it's a fun sport to watch, and I'm a big lacrosse fan too. It's
made its way out here a little bit. It's taken time. Utah has a lacrosse program, and they've been pretty successful. And it's been fun to kind of watch it move out here. It was when I was in high school in Utah. There was no lacrosse.
No,
there's no lacrosse program. We did field a baseball team. We got a baseball team added when I was there. Right. But there was not much lacrosse going on. So it's fun to watch it grow. College hoops.
Right.
We talked a lot of Jazz off season draft. I want to get your read on, and we'll zero in on the specific programs. Utah in the new Alex Jensen era, BYU now in the Kevin Young era with a little asterisk of Ryan Smith and co as well. And listen, that's part of the game now. That is the game now. Right. And BYU with the number 1 recruit in the country coming in AJ DeBonsa. Before we get into the school specifically, how have you, as a guy who adjacently works in these spaces, right? Some of your better players are going to go on, and you, I'm sure, are mentoring them in this process.
Right.
they're going to go on to make money at the college level, and they're dealing with now as 16, 17-year-olds sometimes,
Right.
guys who are either agents or are presenting themselves as agents. They are dealing with contracts now. They are dealing with revenue sharing now
Right.
at the college level. Everett, that is a big change from not only when you played, but just 5-6 years ago.
Right. So let me break it down for you, Porter. So I had 5 kids in the portal this year. All local kids, obviously. None of my guys, except one, hired an agent. They use me. I negotiated all their deals. It's ridiculous that some of these kids are paying 10, 20% of these contracts. It's the dumbest. I'm on air, but it's the dumbest thing ever.
Especially for when you're making a contract for it's not a revenue share because these are NIL stuff. To pay for a college or late high school kids NIL, that is a very simple contract.
Right.
Very simple. Right. To take a big old lump sum of that as an agent, it's absurd. But a lot of them are doing it and doing it in a big rate.
It's the dumbest thing. So it's a lot of my kids just use me. Over my career, Porter, I was with 12 NBA teams, either summer league, preseason, on a roster. I sat back and listened to my agent. I looked at my contracts. I still have my contracts to the day. And it doesn't take that much to negotiate a contract. And I don't charge my kids. So let's get to these are all local kids. Let's start with Carter Welling, 6'10", 6'11" kid, played at UVU last year. Player of the year in a WAC. Everybody, he got in the portal. I'm helping him, right? And I'm not going to get into his numbers because it's none of, it's just I'm not going to get into that. But I didn't charge my kids. He played on my club team. I don't charge. And we negotiated. We got this. I told, I asked him what you want, what Carter want, and we got it, and it was reasonable, moved on. A lot of coaches like dealing with me because I'm not trying to get paid off of it. There are some shady people in this business.
Oh, yeah. You're going to see a lot of – you're already seeing starts of it, lawsuits everywhere of agents that are not getting paid or they're trying to sue a kid because their money didn't come through or – the agent took more money than agreed to in person, but not in the contract, and they're now having to go after the agents. There's a lot of it, and you're going to see a lot more as long as there's no guardrails in place.
So all of my kids are, I'm okay financially. I'm good. I don't need your money. I want you to be successful, but you don't need to hire an agent. I got another big kid. He it kind of worked out his way. The big kid from Alta, 6'10", Jaden Brownell. He was at Sanford. Now he's at USC.
Yeah.
He's going to be a rotational piece with that team. They're going to be really good. Hopefully they can make it to the tournament. Hopefully Musselman can get those guys to the tournament. I had 2 other kids. I got another 6'9" kid, Jaden Farrell, went to Corner Canyon. Now he was at Holy Cross. Now he's at Southern Utah. I think Southern Utah is going to be a sleeper this year. They picked up another one of my kids named Dylan Jones he was at Fairleigh Dickinson last year. He was in top 5 in three-point shooting, can flat-out shoot it, 6'6" shooter. I got another 6'9" kid that's going to Oakland University, but he had offers from Florida State, Porter. He had some big heavy hitters. He liked Oakland. Hey, it is what it is. So he went there. He's making a good living. So this NIL stuff is big business, but some of these kids are getting screwed because of what, they're listening to these agents and it's if you have the right person around you, and it should be your club or your high school coach or maybe a parent reaching out, but you don't need to hire an agent. And you got to make sure these kids take care of their taxes too, because that's going to be another problem.
Yes.
Because some of these kids think this is free money, and we don't do it that way. So all of our kids are making sure their taxes are taken care of.
Well, yeah, when you're 17 and you're seeing all these zeros on an offer sheet, you're cool. Right. I'm a millionaire. Right. Well, there's some context there that a lot of those kids haven't gone through that process yet. And to be completely clear, our systems a lot of times don't give you enough in that regard anyway. Right. So, yeah, there's going to be a learning curve, and there's going to be listen, this is business.
Right.
Every business, whether it's sports or whether it's steel, have players that are going to be operating in bad faith.
Right.
That are going to be trying to take advantage of either means of production or of the product, which in this case is humans, right?
Mhm.
That's the hard part here, is that a lot of these guys that are operating in bad faith, well, you're not
Right.
just hurting numbers on a spreadsheet. These are
Mhm.
17, 18-year-old kids who are trying to
Right.
go and play sports and start the next era of their lives. So a lot of it is not only unfortunate, it's gross, right? But we're not going to really escape it, because we have
Mhm.
gone into this era
Right.
where business is now sports,
Mhm.
college sports. There was a little bit of a separation
Mhm.
of sports and, it's not church and state, it's sports and business,
Right.
because of the amateur title. The problem with that was that you give basically antitrust violators an inch,
Mhm.
and they took a country mile,
Right.
to the point where NCAA executives were making billions,
Right.
and these college kids were working on stipends that sometimes covered lunch and not anything more, right? And it became so much of an issue that
Mhm.
the courts said, you're breaking the law.
Right.
To not have anything in place, Everett, ready to go,
Right.
no parameters in place ready to go when that went down,
Right.
I think it's such a complete issue on the NCAA's part.
Right.
But it's also a disrespect to the students and the players and the kids that are affected by it. And we're still seeing the effects of it, because we're still this is a moving process, but we're now 3 or 4 years of it kind of being continuous. It's unfortunate.
You remember back in the day, they used to say, "You're getting a free education," this and that. And then when people used to say that, I used to be like, Porter, I used to be like, one section at a football game pays for everything for majority of the football players.
And there's
one
value
section,
there.
yeah. And then you have TV rights and all that good stuff. But they were making money for years. I wish I was playing at this era, bringing so much money into the university and not getting really taken care of. I said really taken care of at UNLV. But the thing is, I'm glad these kids are making what they're making, and I'm happy for all these kids, and especially for kids in Utah. And majority of these kids that play club ball I see in high school, I'm really happy for them, and it's just big business at this point. And I'm happy too. The other thing too is the Utah prospects. I think they're going to get better and more exposure for some of these kids playing in Nike. You got to realize 13 first-round picks or 13 draft picks played in EYBL, and they had the most. And then obviously you have Europe and all that. But if you get on that Nike circuit, and we're going to have more kids maybe being showcased and then maybe getting drafted coming out of this EYBL Utah prospect situation, is going to be great for the state of Utah. And I like that the AJ DeBanza kid went to BYU. And, you never know. It can be like, they can get that pick, and maybe he'll stay here. And that's another kid that if he can fall to the Jazz, he'll stay. And that'd be great for the state of Utah.
He's getting a test run of it.
He's already had it, Utah Prep and BYU. And
listen, I don't want to harp on the negatives of this chaos of college basketball. I think a lot of it is going to end up being positive. It's more so just the chaos that has ensued in the first couple years of it.
Right.
And the fact that, even though it may result in a better landing place, the effects are affecting kids, right? And that's the unfortunate part to watch the process there. Now, the positives of it, and we talked about this, legitimizing it and getting to a place where the school can just write a contract with a player, that kind of at least partly takes out some of the opportunity for those bad actors to come in and be part of the process, right? And so we're taking baby steps towards it. How do you think, you mentioned BYU and AJ DeBanza, how do you think that these local schools are set up to operate in this new era, in this money era, this business era of college sports, looking at Kevin Young, what he's built early on with clearly a support system with Ryan Smith and others, going out and paying and getting players that they want. And then with Utah, Alex Jensen and co. trying to do similar things. They don't have Ryan Smith, but they have power players of their own. Right.
The thing is, don't forget about Utah State.
Yeah.
Yeah. They win every year.
And they have donors and a culture that cares about basketball.
Like, I know that head coach.
For sure.
I mean, I dealt with him since he's been here. And the thing is that he does a great job, and we got to give you got to give Alex some time. I just saw Alex a couple weeks ago at Section 7 in Arizona. They're out there recruiting. They're hitting the pavement and trying to get people in. And it's all about getting the right mix of kids and getting them to gel real quick because everybody is new. I mean, I'm pretty sure he has a whole new roster.
Essentially.
Yeah, he does because everybody pretty much left and graduated. So
Keanu Dawes, I think
he's back. That's
only returner,
right?
almost.
So they're gonna have to bond here pretty quick. And I know they're in the gym already. I know they're on a break now, but I think Kevin's gonna always. He's got the resources. They're gonna be good. The point guard from Baylor, I can't remember his name, but he's really good too. The kid they got from Baylor that played with Cooper Flagg, with all those guys that got drafted. He's a solid player.
Right. Robert
Wright. And I think they're going to be real good. They're going to go to the tournament because he has all the resources now. We got to give Alex some time, get his guys in, get him used to his system because he's coming in with a whole new coaching staff and a whole new group. Now, there are some other teams that's good. UVU was great. They were like 4 or 5 possessions from going to the tournament. They lost to Grand Canyon. I was at the game. And I think Todd Phillips does a great job. There are some really good coaches in the state of Utah. And, dude, Porter, pay attention to Utah Tech. I think they're going to be a little bit better this year. They got some good transfer. And I think Coach Jetty does a good job. And like I said, I'm friends with everyone because they recruited majority of my kids. So I think Weber State took a step back this year, but if you get the right guys in, I think even Weber State can be good. So the state of basketball in Utah is in a good place right now, and I think that obviously at the head of the snake is BYU, and they're very good. And he's going to always be good because of the resources.
Yeah, the resources they have right now are kind of driving the conversation.
Right.
I'd like to see. And this is another conversation that I think happens more online than in real life.
Mm-hmm.
There's a hesitancy from people in Provo to lean into it. I think because, listen, it's a culture of modesty. It's what they want to lean into.
Right.
You don't want to be like outwardly just paying for these players and getting them to come to Utah. You want them to be members of the church and part of your culture, right? Listen, there's nothing wrong with paying AJ DeBonsa to come play here.
Right.
He's already getting paid to come play here at the high school level.
Right, yeah.
Just lean into it.
Right.
This is the game, and it's going to only become more part of the game as we get more into these TV contracts.
Right.
Gambling money is getting into college sports.
That Malik Beasley thing is wild. I watched some of his games. Did you see that, Porter? They don't look. He is done. You know that, right? He's done. Did you see that?
Everett, I have to do a Prize Picks read during this show, so I respectfully to them and them only. I think gambling in sports is a big problem, and it makes me not stoked about like the future 50 years of sports in America, just because that's the scope I look at it through. I think it's going to be a lot more of this.
I won't touch it. I won't touch it.
No, touch it because that's what I want to talk about, man.
Yeah, I think they need to get, what is it, the performance one? They need to get away from that because I know they don't do it in college.
Yeah.
They need to get away from it in the pros. They need to get rid of it.
Like the player pick thing?
Yeah, you need to get rid of that. That's one thing you need to get rid of. And the thing is that about Vegas.
What everyone plays now, though.
Yeah, but the thing about Vegas, they lose money when it's crazy like that. And that's why they notify the feds when something happens.
Right.
And they're like, dude, this is kind of weird with this bit. Then why is it? And then they usually. You
don't beat the house unless there's something going on.
Right.
There's a process here, guys.
Right. So they
you spent time in Vegas.
Oh,
you know this.
I know. And the thing is that they some of these things were it was very very interesting. And then I started watching some of his games. It was hilarious. I'm just leaving it at that. I'm not saying he's guilty. He's innocent until proven guilty, but he's done in the NBA. Let's just put it that way.
It's all alleged until otherwise. But we do have my what's his name, Jonte Porter, to look at, where he is done for life. He is banned from the NBA. And Everett, I think that's the only way you can handle it. I really do. I think that we're at a point where this is happening. Let's be clear. This is happening more than just the ones you hear about. You heard about Shohei Ohtani's agent. You heard about Jonte Porter because he got caught.
Right.
You're hearing
what's the
right
Bledsoe.
now.
Bledsoe.
You heard about Mr. Bledsoe. You heard about the ref.
Oh, Mike Donaghy.
Years and years ago
Right.
because he got caught.
Right.
What are we not hearing about, Everett
That's
Craig?
the thing. That's the thing is I can't really get into it a little bit. That I'll tell you later off air. But the thing is, I think they should get rid of that, and hopefully it doesn't trickle down into college, because that's going to be another issue. Because these people don't understand, once they get their tentacles in you, you got to continue, or they're going to tell on you, or they'll make sure it'll get out. So once you do it one time, you're done.
You're in.
You're done, and you can't do it one time, and it's a problem. But hopefully, and these kids are young with a lot of money.
That's why I think it's going to be such an issue, is because we're combining these things at a time where there's no rules, there's no regulations, and as we've talked about, there are bad actors who want to take advantage of all that.
Right.
And I am always someone who pushes back on like conspiracy in sports, right? When people are like, "Oh, convenient about that call at the end of the Super Bowl," right? There's a huge, if your team loses last minute of the game, you think it's the refs, you think it's Vegas, you think there's a conspiracy. I tend to push back on almost all of that. However, the direction of TV money and gambling money in sports, and certain things that I have seen over the last couple of years, Everett, is making me listen to those people more and more every year. The Woody Dixon stuff in the Pac-12 review office. Right. This is a guy who has nothing to do with the replay process. Right. He's a business associate. He is a moneymaker. Right. And he is watching over replay officials for what reason? Right. And we could go into all of the cases we just talked about. Right. Shohei Ohtani's agent betting half of his salary over the course of a year on games, but Shohei doesn't know a thing about it.
Oh, he knew. Allegedly.
Everett, there's more, and I'm a Virginia Tech fan, so I don't want to single this one out, but there was a particular game against the University of Miami with college football playoff implications on the line that everyone saw in high definition. A replay called on the field as it was, watch it over and over and over and over again, and then the refs come out and we're like, "Nope, you didn't see that. You didn't see that guy catch the ball in the back of the end zone and sit down with possession of the ball and then get it like there was more I would say blurry or questionable things in sports the last 2 years than maybe I'm growing up and I'm becoming more alert to it.
Right.
But I'm seeing more of it, and I wonder if other people are too.
Yeah, people think it's Vegas, but Vegas lose money when stuff like that. This is some inside stuff.
I would say Vegas wants it on the up and up, because then they can control the numbers. They can control the lines. They can kind of play the safe side. Right?
Listeners, I'm telling you.
When they lose control, they lose money.
Listeners, I'm telling you, it's not Vegas. They're losing money. It's somebody's doing something shady. So, but he might be done. He might be done. But the thing is that hopefully he doesn't snitch on some people and to save his butt. But
I hope he does. Yeah. I hope he does. Because like you said, there's more going on behind this.
Because I heard that the Porter thing kind of got them looking at him.
Jonte Porter, to be clear.
And then and then I don't know if you saw that came out. His agent, he owes his agent like $650.
Right.
And he jeopardized, because he was about to sign a 4-year, $46 million or whatever deal with Detroit, and they end up not signing him and then taking Duncan Reed.
Oh yeah,
Duncan Robinson. Sorry,
he lost a lot of money by doing this,
and he's done.
And listen, like I said, it brings in bad actors into a situation where there's a lot to take advantage of, and a lot of them are the reason. And to bring it kind of full circle, we'll get back to this. The reason we kind of pull back to the Ace Bailey thing. Not that his agent is doing anything yet on the betting side. We don't know anything like that, and I'm not saying anything about it. But you got to surround yourself with people who know what they're doing and operate in good faith, are licensed, all of the above, because, man, you don't know who's trying to take advantage of you. Someone is trying to take advantage of you somewhere and may not have your best interest at heart. And for 18, 19-year-old kids, man, I just see so much of it that is not above board. And it's frustrating.
Yeah, I know the Cooper guy is not a licensed agent. He's just in his camp. So I know that for a fact. But I think this is probably going to end a little bit bad. But I think it needs to end. and he needs to concentrate and not worry about what Cooper's doing off the floor. He needs to worry about his getting to this bag, getting to that next contract, and that should be your next thing. And then you go from there. You might like it here, you may not, but you got to get to that next contract without any problems.
Yeah, to be clear, he has licensed agents with other clients that do their thing, but he was allowing Omar Cooper, someone he knows personally, to kind of represent him unofficially through the draft process, and it was not a good decision. Omar is a guy who, and listen, if that's your homie, perfect, fine. That's your guy.
Right.
Go hang out with him in the offseason. Do your thing. Send him money.
Right.
Whatever you want.
Right.
But if he is,
don't be the
jeopardizing your process.
Your face of your brand.
Your brand now is a big deal. And at the same time, this is a guy who he got involved in his son's NIL process. I don't know if folks have dug deep into this. His son was a high school football player, college football player. And I'll be honest with you, he lost his son a lot of money in a similar NIL situation. So, just know who you're dealing with and why, and know their limitations as well. Even if that's your boy, know maybe what part of the job to give him, right? Agent's a big ask.
Right.
Hire Everett Gray for that.
Yes, definitely, for free. Kinda.
I appreciate you stopping by, my man.
Ain't no problem.
An hour flies by.
Yeah, it was good. It was good talking to you guys.
I could talk hoops with Everett Gray for a long time. Long time. You mentioned Utah's part of the Union. That was despite my ancestors' best efforts in 1857.
Oh boy!
I bring that up because Outlaw Distilling is a new partner on ESPN 700 Sports Network. Homegrown, grain to glass, nitty gritty whiskey with an identity coming from the old outlaws of Utah's past. Outlaw Distillery, opening in 2015, is Utah's fourth distillery, deeply rooted in Utah's history. I think they're going to be one of the title sponsors for the pregame show as well. So we'll have Outlaw Distillery on board for the football season. Go in and visit the distillery. Book a tour and tasting at outlawdistillery.com. If you do so and tell them ESPN 700 sent you, well, they'll give you a shot glass and fill it up for you as well on site. Boy. So it's a fun time and a cool event to see their process. So stop by at Outlaw Distillery. Everett Gray, thanks to you for hopping on. We'll get you on here with Spence and the fellas.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
We'll introduce you and get you on. I miss you having you on like pretty much weekly with Bill.
Right.
When you mentioned you were a judge, is that how you got connected with Bill? Is that how you knew Bill?
No, I met Bill from a radio show.
Yeah.
Here, yeah. So it was not through a judge memorial.
Well, regardless, he is Everett Gray. He has connections in the hoops world throughout the West and, well, everywhere.
Everywhere. Europe, too.
Europe, Utah, of course, played for Tark and the folks at UNLV. A wealth of basketball knowledge and a fun time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Back on the other side, we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk some hockey. Belle Frazier of the Salt Lake Tribune stops by. The Utah Mammoth have a development camp in Park City this week. So we'll get the latest from Bell, new draft picks, some trades in the offseason already, free agency. Their schedule very much mimics the NBA schedule or very close to. So we'll get Bell's latest on the Mammoth offseason. Pablo Mastroeni for some Real Salt Lake. And like I mentioned, we're 59 days away from college football here in Utah. The Utes take on UCLA in the Rose Bowl August 30th right here on Utah's #1 Sports Talk. Porter Larsen here, filling in for Spence on a Wednesday. We'll finish off the 4 o'clock hour next with Belle Frazier, and we'll do it right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back. Drive Time on a Wednesday afternoon, the 4 o'clock hour here on ESPN 700. Talking some Utah Mammoth in this segment with none other than Belle Frazier of the Salt Lake Tribune. It's at Belle Frazier1 on social media, in the pages, or I guess online now at Salt Lake Tribune. Belle Frazier, have you ever seen a actual printed version of the Salt Lake Tribune, or did you miss that?
I have. We still print on Wednesdays and Sundays.
I forgot about that.
Everyone should get their printed versions.
I was going to say, I need to subscribe to that just because I get it. It's, it's not exactly practical. We all get the stories beforehand online anyway, but there's something nostalgic. There's a good feel about cracking open the paper when you get your hands on one.
I will say selfishly as a writer, it's cool seeing your name in print. As cool as it is online, it's fun being able to save those clips for sure.
Right. And I'm sure folks, grandmas or aunts somewhere love clipping your articles and putting them somewhere. So yeah, we'll keep printing them for now, Wednesdays and Sundays on the Salt Lake Tribune. Every other day, of course, at sltrib.com on the sports side. Belle, let's I guess we'll make it easy by starting where you're at and on site at the Utah Mammoth offseason development up in Park City, correct? Give us the lowdown from up there and what to expect from a bunch of new faces already. I don't know how many of them are on site, how many of them you expect to be on site, but man, a lot of changes. Feels like we're drinking through a fire hose on the Mammoth offseason so far.
Yeah, it's been a wild week, starting off with the NHL draft, right into development camp, and then obviously free agency happened yesterday. So a lot of Mammoth news this week, but development camp started on Monday. They had 2 on-ice sessions at Park City Ice Arena. They were split into a forward group and a defenseman group. Each session was around 2 hours, a lot of non-puck drills, a lot of skating, and then in the second half they'd have pucks and more drills. And tomorrow will be the 4-on-4 scrimmage at Utah's Olympic Oval, which is not open to the public, unfortunately. But these last 2 practices were, and it was really cool to see all the fans that came out up to Park City to watch these prospects play. I think some standout names that were more anticipated names who attended the camp this year: Cole Baudouin, he was one of their first-round picks last year; Tija Ginla, Daniel Boot, Caleb Desnoyers, he was their 4th overall pick this year. Dmitry Simachev, Michael Hrabal, who's the goaltender. So a lot of the names that people have kind of been following throughout the season in their respective leagues finally made it to Utah and got to get an up-close view of them. I think there were a lot of questions around Tija Ginla and if he would be able to fully participate, and he has been. He revealed that he got double hip surgery this year. He got his right hip done in December and left hip done in January, and he took the year off, obviously, from the WHL to go through rehabilitation, did a lot of, mental work and video work with the development staff with Utah and with the Kelowna Rockets, who is his team in the Junior Canadian Leagues. And he said that this week at development camp has kind of been the first time he's been fully back to skating. He wasn't in a non-contact jersey, which was a good sign. And he said he's feeling good. He's doing a lot of work away from the rink after, like rolling out and doing different kinds of stretches to keep his hips good. He said he feels a little stiff, but other than that, really good to be back. And I think it's a sigh of relief for Mammoth management because he was the 6th overall pick last year, first ever pick for this franchise, and is projected to be a really big forward for them in their top 6 eventually, probably maybe not next year. But I think that's been a highlight from Dev Camp is that Tija Ginla is okay. He looks good, as do a lot of the other top prospects.
You mentioned Tija Ginla and some of the prospects from last year. And I, like a lot of people here in Utah, are still kind of learning a little bit more the intricacies of the NHL, of hockey. When you look at the Jazz, you look at NBA, you make a draft pick in the association, Bell, and a lot of times that guy is playing in summer league a week later and is contributing, as a player that year, especially with first-round draft picks. It seems the NHL is much more of a kind of baseball style where you're picking in a draft sometimes 9, 10, 11 players, and, well, you might see one of the first-rounders in a year or two. Give me an idea how it differs in hockey and how we should be looking at some of these prospects, and maybe highlight one of the or two or three of the rookies from this year that we may actually see in coming seasons.
Yeah, well, NHL is different. Like you said, I don't think fans should be discouraged if you don't see some of these prospects in the NHL roster, because teams own a player's rights for 3 to 4 years after they get drafted, whether they go the NCAA college hockey route or they go back to Canadian juniors or whatever it might be. So if they're not playing next year, it doesn't mean they're not in the Mammoth system. They still are. Everyone's still keeping tabs on them. But the NHL is a big, heavy league, and a lot of the times management likes these guys to go get a bit more experience and get more playing time. You know, if you're the best guy on your college team, you're playing top line minutes, you're playing the power play, penalty kill, you're developing in all situations, where if you're in the NHL or even the AHL, those opportunities kind of limit themselves. So a lot of these guys will go back for a year or two and kind of get bigger, get stronger, like I said, get a little bit more situational experience so they're able to come in and make a quicker impact. I think it varies for, you know, first round, second round, third round picks. I think if TJ Ginla didn't get hip surgery this year and he had a full year in the WHL and he was on pace for, you know, a record season in points, he only played around 20 games, but there would have been probably bigger conversations about him making the team this year. And I think that is probably the same for Caleb Desnoyers. You know, he said he was the 4th overall pick this year. So usually those guys can go right away or they'll take a year or two. And he said he's going to trust Bill Armstrong and management and his family and his agents to make the decision on his development, but he wants to make the team this year. He could go back to the queue with the Moncton Wildcats and be their captain. He could commit to an NCAA team, but he said he wants to surprise everyone and he wants to make the roster. So it really is in these players' hands, and it's going to be a really competitive training camp because there are limited roster spots and they've brought in so many guys, they've drafted so many guys, but there's surprises all the time. You know, Josh Doan made it last year, and Dylan Gunther didn't make it the year before, and now he's one of their top forwards. So you really never know. And I think the overarching theme here is fans shouldn't be discouraged if you don't see some of these names immediately in the roster. It's honestly probably a good thing because they're getting better before they make that transition.
Well, it gives those guys time to sit behind some already established players on the Utah Mammoth, but that doesn't mean they're not making other changes, right? You may not see some of these fresh faces for a year or two, but the Mammoth are also making moves on the free agency and the trade market. I guess it's best to just ask about the most recent ones. Mammoth signed a former Stanley Cup winner, Nate Schmidt, to a 3-year deal worth $10.5 million last night, and they've made a bunch of signings in the last couple of days. Give us the latest on their free agency acquisitions, and then we'll recap their latest trade real quick as well.
Yeah, Nate Schmidt was one of their free agent signings yesterday. He's a 33-year-old defenseman, won a Stanley Cup last year with the Florida Panthers, and it was really a prove-it year for him. He was only on a 1-year deal in Florida. It was under $1 million AAV, and he made his money in the postseason, and I think that's a big reason why Utah brought him in. He went from 19 points in 80 regular season games to 12 points in 23 playoff games en route to the championship. He was a guy they had out there in big moments of the game. He'll block a shot, you know, he'll take a hit, he'll throw a hit, and he put it all on the line. I think you saw that through the Florida Panthers lineup. So to get that winning experience and mentality in the room is good, and also just adds defenseman depth because they had so many injuries last year and had to call up guys from the AHL and pull guys off of waivers. This is just a bit more insurance and a guy that's been around the block and knows what it takes to win at this level. And then Scott Perunovich was the other defenseman they signed. He'll probably be more of a 7th, 8th defenseman, might spend some time in the AHL. But again, just a bit more insurance. He's 26 years old. He signed a 1-year, 2-way contract worth $775,000 at the NHL level. Then goaltending too. You know, there's uncertainty around Connor Ingram and his situation, when he'll be able to rejoin the team. So Utah signed Nate Schmidt's teammate from Florida, Vitek Vanacek, 29-year-old goaltender, on a 1-year, $1.5 million contract. So kind of bridges the gap, gives them some more options in net before some of their prospects are ready, like Michael Hrabal, who we've seen this year in development camp. And they hope he's just able to go in there and take some of the workload off of Karel Vejmelka. in the last signing, and they also signed Kyler Yamamoto, but everyone knows Yamamoto from last year. So I'll say the last new signing is Brandon Tanev, another veteran, 33 years old. He's a winger. He signed a 3-year, $7.5 million contract. He'll probably be a middle six, bottom six player. Bill Armstrong described his game as having some bang in it. He'll fight. He's physical. He'll block shots, but he also produces. He had 22 points, I believe, this year. But we talked to him today, and he was excited to be in Utah. He said he was attracted to the team because of their young core, because of the ownership, everything that's been going on here the past year. And he's looking to just be another one of those voices that younger guys can look to. And he brings a lot of energy, a lot of bite to the games. And I think that's something that Utah was missing at times last season. So not a lot of flashy names or the ones that are on the headlines of the national news or the national trackers, but it's Bill Armstrong's style. He was conservative with the cap. They have around $10 million left in cap space this year, still looking to sign restricted free agent Jack McBain, maybe extend Logan Cooley. So he added where they needed to in all different positions and didn't overspend on someone that's, going to give them problems 6 years down the road if you sign them to a 7 or 8 year contract.
I know you've got to run, so we'll be quick on this one. Quick reaction, of course. JJ Peterka, one of the highest scorers for Buffalo, 68 points last season, a career high. And the big part is not just trading for him, but of course the agreed upon 5-year, $38 million extension. He would have been a free agent yesterday had that not gone through. So quick reaction to Peterka and maybe some other trades you may see, and we'll set you loose.
Yeah, I think Peterka, for a while, Buffalo made it seem like he wasn't going to be available on the trade market. He was going to be a restricted free agent. So they still had his rights, but it sounds like he kind of forced his way out of Buffalo. Bill Armstrong said that he started to hear that Peterka might be available around the NHL Combine in early June. So he proceeded to continue to make calls and work out a deal. And Utah got Peterka in exchange for defenseman Michael Kessering and forward Josh Stone. I know that was pretty sad for a lot of fans because those guys were a big part of the inaugural season, just really good human beings. But Armstrong said it, to get a great player, you have to give up good guys as well. And, that's what serious teams that want to win do. I think, two of the main things about JJ Peterka is his age. He's 23 years old, which matches with Utah's core. Logan Cooley and Dylan Guenther, both 21, 22. So Peterka is going to develop and mature alongside these guys. It's not like they signed a 29-year-old for 5 years who's going to be ahead of the team's timeline. And from what we've talked about from Buffalo reporters and people who have watched him play, they think he hasn't reached his ceiling at all. People think he could have a 40-goal season one year. He scored 27 last year. So I think that's really appealing for Utah as well, because he could get better and he will get better, and they're signing up on his potential as well. So we should be able to talk to him tomorrow, I believe, so we'll have more on his perspective of the trade and sign, but expect him to be, an important part of Utah's top 6 next season.
That is Belle Frazier of the Salt Lake Tribune up at Park City's development camp for the Utah Mammoth. Get her coverage of it there and at the Salt Lake Tribune. Thanks, Belle. Awesome.
Thank you.
Always appreciate Belle's time. She is a rookie on the beat. Obviously, it's the first year here for the Utah Mammoth, officially here in Salt Lake City, but second season, but she is in her first year covering the Utah Mammoth, and she's done a really, really good job of doing it. A good feel of the team and a wealth of knowledge on the game of hockey. Always appreciate her time, and we'll chat with Belle next week when we know a little bit more on the Utah Mammoth free agency trades and the like. She mentioned, of course, JJ Peterka, the trade that they made last week, a player who probably a first-line caliber player, but from what we understand, probably going to be a second-line player, kind of a sixth man, Jordan Clarkson, if you will, for the Utah Mammoth. As she mentioned, they also signed Yamamoto, Schmidt, Tanev, Perunovic, a bunch of new faces for Utah. They will try to get restricted free agent Jack McBain signed as well. So there's still a lot of movement, and Utah Mammoth will be busy. I think that's something you'll probably just have to get used to. Number one, hockey rosters go and undergo a lot more change than your typical basketball roster. So, you folks who are not used to following hockey, more like a baseball roster where you're seeing farm teams, you're seeing a bunch of different signings. It's not like the NBA where there's not an official G League team, ECHL. It goes down and down and down, and there's so many players that sometimes it's hard to get a track of. Thanks to Bell for reading between the lines on that and giving you guys an idea of what players you may actually get to see, not only at development camp, but in 2025, 2026 with the new look Utah Mammoth, who will be a young but really talented unit with aspirations of making a playoff. A lot of folks think that they are in kind of the wild card range. So some postseason hockey not out of the question next year here in Utah. Switching gears a little bit, still regarding some Nets, it's soccer time. Pablo Mastroeni stops by the program on the other side. Real Salt Lake with 4 points in their last two after a really, really rough early season run. A slow June, a busy July. Utah men's national team, Utah women's national team. We'll get to all of that with Pablo Mastroeni in the next segment. Big thanks to our friends at Dish Pros for sponsoring the 4 o'clock hour of The Drive. Call 801-424-DISH. That's 801-424-DISH to get your television watching experience dialed in. Home internet options, streaming options. Ryan and the folks at the Dish Pros can help you get that all figured out and make it easier on you, all with one remote. You know how it is, right? We got this, what we were told was going to be this new, shiny, easy-to-use future of streaming, right? Where we used to have all these numbers we typed into remotes and all these different channels. Well, now you just have 86 different streaming options. Well, Ryan can kind of help you navigate that and this world of home internet and streaming and television. 801-424-DISH. Pablo Mastroeni of Real Salt Lake joins us on the other side. It is The Drive with Spence Checketts. No Spence Checketts today. I am Porter Larsen filling in. Best of tomorrow. Whole bunch of baseball over the weekend. Spence will be back with you on a Monday right here on Utah's #1 sports talk. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Rolling along on a Wednesday afternoon, drive time on Utah's #1 sports talk. It is ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. I am Porter Larsen, filling in for Spence on this Wednesday. Tomorrow, you'll get a little best of segments of the show, and then all July 4th weekend long, it is a baseball marathon on the station. So tune in for all of that, and then we'll be back on a Monday. It was a slow June and a really busy upcoming July for the Claret and Cobalt. The gaffer of Real Salt Lake, he is one Pablo Mastroeni, making his weekly stop on the program today. Pablo, how are you, friend?
How you doing, Porter? Doing well, man.
I'm doing well. It's a fun weekend. We get a little time away enjoying the sun. So it'll be a little slow for me here in early July, much like it was a little slower for you in June. I know things are about to turn up, but give us an idea how good it was, Pablo, for the club to get a little time to decompress, but also get a little time to get back on track. 4 points in 2 matches in June. Quite the, I don't want to say turnaround because it's short and it's what you expect. But quite the difference from the early part of the season. What was your read on June?
Yeah, no, I think we had a lot of time to kind of reflect as a group and tactically work on some things, but to really just dial in and try to fine tune some of the areas of the game that we need to continue to work on. We're still waiting for some important players in Ojeda, Mecca, and now Diego Luna off with the national team. But since they've been away, other guys have had opportunities, have done a really good job with them. And again, putting two good performances back to back has been really important for the spirit of the group. And again, just looking forward to getting some healthy bodies back and players back, and then kind of joining the team in a good run of form. And so, like you said, it's a small snapshot, but it brings me a lot of optimism in the direction that we're heading in as far as the rest of the campaign.
Yeah, give us a little insight into what good it did for the club off the field. Right, you're dealing with injuries. You're dealing with, of course, waiting for guys that either recently have signed or waiting on guys, maybe in the next summer transfer window. You're also, Pablo, waiting on a U.S. men's national team absence. Take us inside the locker room when you're missing guys to multiple different things. How difficult it is to keep everyone on the same page when there's so many moving parts.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing with soccer is players going away with their national teams, and in Brian Ojeda's case, he's been dealing with his visa paperwork the last month, and all these things at times could be a distraction, and it has been tough, but it gives guys like Nelson Palacio and Pablo Ruiz the opportunity to step in there. And they've had some good performances in the last couple games, and I think, having a Mecca and a Ojeda jump back in, and I just feel like these are opportunities for the team to really rise above and bolster the group. And then obviously with Diego Luna, it's been fantastic watching him represent the national team. I think he's been the most impactful player to this point. Opened his account against Costa Rica in the last game, and just watching him celebrate, I just know how far he's come in a short time, and to be able to do that on that stage representing the U.S. Brings me great joy, and also brings his teammates great joy. I think the environment that we've been able to create as a collective has allowed Diego Luna to express his best self, and now we all get to enjoy the benefits of that watching him on TV.
You're a guy who played on the national team level. You played at that stage. Obviously, different type of player than Diego Luna. But, man, you got to think that beyond just scoring on that stage, scoring for the national team, you've got to think that there's got to be some, long-term confidence, long-term belief that Diego can bring from his United States men's national team endeavors, and especially when you see him putting the ball in the back of the net at that stage.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. One of the things that, you know, some of the conversations I've had with Diego in the past couple of years has been really his commitment to the defensive side of the game. And I think in order to be one of the best attacking players, you also are tasked with being engaged defensively. Again, you're not always going to win the ball, but how do you make it predictable? How are you anticipating? And with every game I see him play, defensively, he's one of the most dialed-in players on the field. And so you couple that with his attacking prowess, and that is the embodiment of everything we are as a team, right? We want to be the best attacking team, but we also want to be the best defending team, because if the guys up front are doing a great job defensively, we can win the ball higher up the field and create more goal-scoring opportunities. And so I just, I think him coming back to our group will inject a boost of confidence, a boost of belief. And obviously with him playing the way he's playing, I'm sure that more goals and more assists will come our way.
What are your expectations, bringing him back into the fold? Obviously, Johnny Russell, an addition here recently. You're going to be working with a new grouping. Obviously, a lot of these players have been around, but you're going to be bringing guys back from injury. You're going to be bringing Diego back into the fold, in addition to some new players that you've recently signed. What are your expectations of them gelling together here as July gets off to a busy start?
Yeah, I think that's always, you want to have ideas before you go into it. And we've been talking about that in and amongst the coaches as to how, different formations that would bring Diego back into the group in a way that would still highlight what Xavier Gozo's been able to do in the last stretch of games, where he's been probably our most dangerous attacking player as far as getting in behind defenses. You have Johnny, who's coming off 2 really good performances, and so I think we have plans for that. But the most important thing to take into consideration is how each player comes back from these camps. Diego left us after we played LA Galaxy. He's been on a long slog, and so when the U.S. finish up with this tournament, hopefully with a championship, it's going to be a conversation with Diego how we bring him back in. Is he ready to go? Does he need a little bit of a break so that we don't run him through the grinder? And so I think those are conversations, but we have different ideas, change of shapes, different pairings in the attack to best suit our team, and I think we'll have a better idea as to what we'll do once we get everyone back in the building.
And once you do get everyone back in the building, obviously it's going to give you, Pablo, more to work with on a rotation side, on an attack side. That's where I want to ask, how do you get this attack jump-started now that you're approaching a time when you have everyone back in the room? You got to go back to April 26th for the last time that RSL scored more than 2 goals in a game. That's something I know you want to correct and work on. Hey, points are points, right? You'll take 1-1, you'll take 2-0, but you, I'm sure, would like to see some more goal scoring. What's that look like schematically with the I guess reformation of a full lineup?
Yeah, so I think, and again, it's one thing to put it on paper. It's another thing to see the players actually interact in real time in games, right? And it's so I think the part that we have to really utilize is the fact that we have a lot of games coming up, and so it gives us the ability to pair different players. Johnny hasn't played with Diego. Diogo was out for a little bit. Gozo's really come on the scene here in the last 7-8 games. And so whilst we're halfway through the season, there's still a lot of, newness to the group and trying to build that chemistry that will be important for us to make a run and hopefully get to the playoffs. So, it's like I said earlier, I think the most important thing is getting everyone in the building and then, using everyone's strengths. So, right, Gozo likes to stretch and his speed is important. So we have to use that. And I think the individual aspects of each player will help us then dictate what system we go with, right? And so typically we've been attacking in a 3-2-4-1. We can definitely do that. And then you have Diego and Diogo back, and Diego's playing really well at the moment. And so it's just amazing how, the players change and morph with the different players that are in and around them. And so I think that's why I keep saying, it's important to get everyone in the building to see how everyone connects on a level, but mainly using their individual attributes to decide the system for us.
Give us an idea, the opportunity presented to you Saturday. You have St. Louis. You have them at home. This is a club that goal differential-wise, they're just about bottoms of the league alongside DC United and the LA Galaxy. A good opportunity maybe to get all these guys on the same page. But how do they present difficulties and opportunities for you guys on a matchup standpoint?
Yeah, I think St. Louis is a team that prides themselves in transition. In other words, they're really expansive, and they like to play a little bit more direct. They like the ball to bounce, and then they just pounce on the ball and attack the goal. So that's their strength. But it's also a weakness of theirs in defensive transition, where because they are so expansive and their shape is so big, and there's a lot of space between each player on their team. It's an opportunity for us to really exploit them in transition as well. So a couple of things that we'll be looking for is obviously nothing changes as far as trying to control the game with the ball, but really when we win the ball defensively, it's how quickly we can really attack a disorganized St. Louis shape, because they're going to be really spread out, and I think that affords us the best opportunity to really capitalize and get those more than 2-goal kind of game performances that we're looking for. So the one thing in this league, Porter, is that anyone can win on any given day, and that's why momentum is so important in this league. And so we got to really lead on the last 2 performances and put forth a performance that our fans, the players, and everyone affiliated with the club will be proud of.
What can we expect from a lineup standpoint, from a personnel standpoint, as you and I just discussed, right? You're expecting a lot of folks back in July, including some international assignment returns, but maybe not by Saturday. What are we looking at for a matchup at home against St. Louis?
Yeah, so Emeka's still working his way back to full fitness. Ojeda will be joining the group on Friday after a month off, and obviously Diego Luna's out until the tournament ends. And so for us, it's I've been really proud of the last couple of performances, and I think the majority of those guys will take the field, and we may see some new faces coming into the game and as reserves to hopefully change the complexion of the game and add some goals and some quality to the attack and defending as we get into the later stages of the game. So I just anticipate a pretty similar lineup as the last 2 performances.
And in those last 2, Pablo, give me an idea of how the attack is, being formed, right? Without Diego Luna there, obviously he's a guy you like to lean on there. In these 2 wins that you've had, in these 2 games that you've got points in the last 2, what has been the formation of the attack? What are you trying to lean on as far as up front, guys, creation wise?
Yeah, so we've changed it a little bit since Luna's departure. We've really focused on the 2 front guys in Willie Agata and Xavier Gozo, really stretching the back line, always being a threat in behind the defense. Diogo's taken on a more central role in between the lines, right? So when you have stretch back line, you open up gaps in the middle. Diogo's been doing a great job of really orchestrating that space, being able to turn. And then on the side, Johnny's a 1v1 player, and so our ability to find him on the right flank. And Alex Catranas has put together 2 really good performances with 2 assists in the last 2 games. So that makes up the attack. I think the important thing is that that when Diogo or Diego, any attacking midfielder has the ball in between the lines, that there's always options in behind the defense to really break the team right down the middle. And I think Gozo in the last 3 games has created 2 big scoring chances in each game, and that's a real positive. So again, I think the trend of our attack has been really good. and one of the things, again, execution in that final piece has been getting better, and not to where we want it to be at the moment, but knowing that, especially with a guy like Gozo, we're going to need a little bit of patience and time to get those things going. But he's putting himself in fantastic positions with Diogo orchestrating and Johnny Russell on the wire as a 1v1 player.
All right, Pablo, we appreciate your time as always. We're going to set you loose, but I got to ask, what are the plans outside of a Saturday soccer match? Of course, has your attention this weekend, but what does the July 4th weekend look like with Pablo's crew?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just I have family coming into town, so we'll hopefully enjoy a nice barbecue on Friday and spend the day with the family, and then the biggest celebration is hopefully 3 points after the game on Saturday. There
you go, 3 points and some fireworks, I think, at America First Field. Thanks, Pablo.
Yep. All right, thanks, Bort. Appreciate it, bud.
Always appreciate Pablo Mastroeni's time, the gaffer of Real Salt Lake. Kind of going into detail there about what to expect over the next month. It was a really slow June for RSL, but they've got a pretty busy July slate to come. And then, of course, as you get into August, September, it is crunch time in Major League Soccer. Now, listen, I don't have the knowledge of the beautiful game that Spence does or that really any soccer analyst does. So you'll notice when I interview Pablo, I'm asking him questions that you might ask, right? I'm learning the game of soccer. Basically, the day I started working here 6 years ago is when I started learning soccer. So we're getting there. But a lot of my coverage of the game is going to be more about a schematic, a roster standpoint, and the like. I'm not going to, like a lot of people, I believe, BS you on knowing the ins and outs of what St. Louis is going to try to do to RSL. I don't know. They're going to try to score goals. And Pablo's going to try to stop that while scoring some of his own. Appreciate his time. As always, RSL and St. Louis comes your way this weekend. That is a Saturday kick for the Claret and Cobalt. Of course, appreciate Pablo's time. As always, tickets at rsl.com. And like I said, I think they got fireworks on Saturday, so it should be a fun day out at America First Field. 7:30 is the kick time for the 5, 4, and 10 RSL squad. Still to come in the program in the next hour. Talking a lot of Utah Jazz offseason, a lot of NBA free agency, NBA draft, and more. We'll get into the Utah Mammoth, their offseason, their development camp, and, of course, we are 59 days away from kickoff of Utah football. They face off with UCLA at the Rose Bowl August 30th. So still an hour to go, and all of that to cover on a Wednesday edition of The Drive. I am Porter Larsen, filling in for Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Yes, it's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, live on YouTube and at ESPN700sports.com. We are done rambling for the week. I am Porter Larsen, filling in for Spence Checketts on a Wednesday edition of The Drive, getting you guys ready for the 4th of July weekend. We're off for the long weekend. Tomorrow, you'll get a best-of edition of both the OC Show and The Drive with Spence Checketts, so you'll hear some notable interviews from the year and from the last week or so. Plenty of free agency talk, some off-season college football, some NFL stuff mixed in there as well. So we'll set you loose. And then over the weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, if you tune into the station, there is a high likelihood you're going to be hearing Major League Baseball. A bunch of games on the docket there. So tune in over the weekend. Whether you're out rodeoing, setting off fireworks, at the parade, whatever you may be doing, tune into ESPN 700 when you have a moment. Olivia Benyon behind the glass. What's your 4th of July look like?
The most basic 4th of July. Going to my parents' house, having a barbecue, sitting in the backyard, watching everyone else's fireworks.
Maybe some sparklers.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Those
fair.
snap pop-it things too.
That's fair. Well, enjoy it. Hopefully, are you doing the golf show with Paul?
Yes, okay. I am.
So you'll be here on Saturday. The one time that you'll hear live programming from the station over the course of the weekend. The rest of it's going to be all from our national friends at ESPN Radio. You have a bunch of MLB baseball. Tonight, you've got U.S. Women's National Team, a friendly with Canada. The U.S. Women's National Team coming off a 4-0 win over Ireland. So make sure you tune in for that one. That starts right after we hang up here on The Drive, and it features Utah Royals' own Allie Sentnor. So U.S. Women's National Team action, courtesy of Westwood One, comes your way right after the show and right after this. Before we hang up, I want to thank everyone for listening, whether, you're down south in St. George, you're up north in Logan, you're out in the mountains of Oakley, where I'll be this weekend doing some rodeo action. Doesn't matter where you're at. We appreciate your ears, whether you're listening live on the AM side, the FM side. You're watching on YouTube, maybe. I don't know why you're watching us do radio, but I appreciate you for doing so. And if you didn't listen to the show live, you can catch it. Tony Jones, Everett Gray, Belle Frazier, Pablo Mastroeni, all of it in podcast form at ESPN700sports.com. Stitcher, Spreaker, Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcast. It doesn't matter where you listen. Just search The Drive with Spence Checketts. Search ESPN 700. Rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help out the show, and we appreciate you guys for doing so and appreciate your ears each and every day. Happy 4th of July weekend to you. Be safe with the fireworks, please. Don't blow your hands off. Don't start any wildfires, but have a great time with your lovely families. And we'll chat on a Monday right here on Utah's #1 sports talk. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.